Hello there everyone, welcome to the channel if you're new, welcome back if you aren't. I am EDJ, and we have covered the Battle of Pharsalus. Technically we did last video with the fall of Pompeii, though this is going to be specifically much more devoted to that. I can't wait. Pharsalus is an insane battle, and Caesar's brilliant idea of just having the reserves and the spearmen there just won him the day. Genius on his part to envision their plan of breaking his side and then completely reversing essentially the momentum that the Pompeians build. Just masterful, quite frankly, and I can't wait to see it explained. So if you want to watch the original video without me talking or pausing to talk, the link's in the description down below. With that said, and without any further ado, let us learn from the great Historia Civilis himself, from the Battle of Pharsalus.
Caesar's civil war had begun. Caesar had marched on Rome, and Pompey and many senators fled to Greece. Someday I'll spend an entire video deconstructing the words Caesar marched on Rome, but for today I'll skip right over that part. Caesar's old pal Bibulus had been given command of the Adriatic fleet, and had been ordered to prevent Caesar from crossing into Greece. Side note, Romans don't really respect naval warfare. Admirals were seen as less than generals, and Roman navies tended to fall under the command of ex-praetors, or sometimes old ex-consuls as a way to put them out to pasture.
Wow.
Bibulus was an ex-consul, and he'd been the governor of Syria, which on paper should have landed him at the head of an army, or at least as one of Pompey's advisors. But as we know, Bibulus's term as consul was extremely embarrassing, as was his term as governor for totally different reasons. The fact that Pompey stuck him in left field commanding the Adriatic fleet was honestly a slap in the face. But this was Bibulus's moment.
Yeah, no one respects Bibulus. After that 1 year, his year Julius Caesar, it's just Bibulus. He's just a walking L. I keep calling him a walking L because he is. He probably should have just retired, man. He should have just left and just let himself fade from the annals of history. He tries to redeem himself, I suppose, here, but he dies after trying to convince Caesar to let him conduct his siege without offering Caesar anything. I'm just dude, what's going on here? I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry for anyone who, disrespect if you like Bibulus. I really don't. This is just my opinion, just walking out. I'm sorry.
He was now responsible for keeping Caesar in Italy. Time dragged on and winter set in. During the winter, everything kind of shut down. Armies didn't march and ships didn't sail, so Bibulus did the normal thing and brought his navy into port. Caesar launched an unexpected and daring crossing of the Adriatic. This was extremely dangerous, but not totally unprecedented. He had done the same thing when he crossed the Rubicon last year. In the end, Caesar and his army were in Greece before anybody even noticed anything. When Bibulus started to get reports that Caesar was no longer in Italy, he immediately knew what had happened and mobilized the fleet. He caught Caesar's empty ships on their return trip, but it didn't do him much good. Bibulus would maintain his naval blockade for the rest of the winter, but at some point he got sick, and he died at sea. He died as he lived, disappointed. In Greece, Caesar had a fairly bad initial clash with Pompey's army, and he was forced to withdraw. His army was now cut off and undersupplied, thanks to Bibulus. According to Caesar, Pompey had 45,000 infantry and 7,000 cavalry, while Caesar had 22,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry. Now these numbers come directly from Caesar, so let's not take them too seriously, but everybody agrees that Caesar was significantly outnumbered. The prelude to ancient battles tended to have this rhythm to them, where the two armies would basically dance back and forth with each other for sometimes weeks at a time. Each army would deploy every day, stare at each other, and then retire at night having done nothing. Maybe the scouts would get into a bit of a tussle, but that would be it. Each army would be seeking the slightest advantage. When one side believed they had the edge, they would try to force the battle to begin. This little dance was an underrated part of the job, but Caesar was eerily good at it. He could go back and forth for a solid month with seemingly infinite patience. So, when Pompey and Caesar...
It's watching Kings and Generals, Caesar series and this, it's often just Caesar positioning himself in battle formation, but never actually giving battle until he can finally have an advantage. So, yeah, it's like you see it a lot, but it's good to know, explained outrightly there.
Entered visual range of each other, they began their dance. Pompey's opening move was to deploy up on the hill, which put him at an undeniable advantage. He was in friendly territory, he had a larger army, he was better supplied. He could afford to take his time and force Caesar into a bad position. A few days passed, and it started to become clear to Caesar that Pompey wasn't coming down off the hill. He ordered his men to start breaking camp. Maybe if he withdrew, Pompey would give chase and Caesar could find a better place to fight. Then, just as Caesar was getting ready to leave, Pompey deployed down off the hill, with a river on his right flank. Apparently there was some infighting among Pompey's advisors.
Yep.
They had already beaten Caesar in a non-decisive battle, and everybody was telling Pompey to quit playing with Caesar and get it over with. Even though they were deploying on neutral ground, Pompey still believed that he had the advantage. Caesar took the bait. He ordered his men to stop packing up and start getting ready for battle. Pompey had a significant numerical advantage, and when you're in that position you can either go wide or go deep. He went deep. This made it pretty much impossible for the enemy infantry to break through his line. His plan was to let Caesar come to him, get bogged down fighting his infantry, and then send his superior cavalry around the side to attack Caesar's flank. Pompey was using the river on his right to his advantage. With the river serving as a shield, he could neglect his right flank and pour all of his energy into one overwhelming push on his left. It's a good plan, and if I were smart enough to think of it, it's what I would have done. Pompey had the larger army and occupied the battlefield first, so Caesar didn't have a lot of options. He deployed his infantry in the standard 3 lines of attack, with all of his cavalry on his right. Caesar ordered his first 2 lines forward. When they got in range, they charged, but Pompey's men didn't move. This was unusual. When Caesar's men noticed this, they abruptly pulled back to regroup. This was an incredible show of discipline, and most armies could not have pulled this off. See, when Roman infantry charged, they would usually break formation when they slammed into the enemy, and if they had done so here, it would have been like hitting a brick wall. So instead of charging, Caesar's units formed up again, took their time throwing their javelins, got into a tight formation, and advanced slowly into Pompey's line. It's a testament to Caesar's highly experienced centurions that they were able to see what Pompey's men were doing and change their tactics mid-charge.
Yep.
But despite all of this, Caesar's infantry were now locked down, which is exactly what Pompey wanted. As all this was happening, Pompey ordered his massive cavalry on his left to advance. Remember, they were the key to winning this whole thing. Caesar's cavalry responded and charged, but they stood no chance. So after a bit of fighting, Caesar's cavalry broke off and started running back towards their own line. Pompey's cavalry gave chase. All of a sudden, through the dust and the horses and the confusion, Pompey's cavalry could see that there was something right ahead of them. It was Caesar's infantry, about 3,000 of them. Caesar had put his cavalry there to shield his infantry from view. This wasn't a rout, it was a feint. The infantry had abandoned their swords and were using their javelins as spears, perfect for stopping a cavalry charge. At this point, Pompey's cavalry were in a full-out sprint, and not in formation or ready in any way when they crashed into Caesar's line of infantry. This threw everything into total chaos. Pompey's cavalry were totally broken, and they started to flee off the field. Caesar's men didn't give chase, but showed that incredible discipline again and formed up in a mix of cavalry and infantry, and advanced as one.
Wow.
They wheeled and engaged
a
Pompey's...
complete Uno reverse card, man. And like I said, he mentioned the infighting earlier, and the way kings and generals put it, Pompey wanted to do the Fabian strategy and essentially, wear Caesar out, but due to the infighting and the pressure of his people, they basically kind of forced him into giving Caesar a pitched battle, which, again, probably not the best thing, because Pompey's strategy was just wear him out with time. And I think if Pompey hadn't had those dumb people advising him and pressuring him, and he'd been allowed to go with what he wants, I think he may have had a much better chance of winning. But even with that said, even though he gave a pitched battle, again, his strategy was just great. It was so sound, destroy this, but Caesar, being the genius he is, thought it through. It's like, alright, let me have these, essentially spear/javelin men break the cavalry in one swoop and then just do what Pompey wanted to do. It's just genius.
His left flank. At the moment of contact, Caesar ordered his third line forward. He now had 100% of his men committed, putting as much pressure as possible on Pompey's line. Things began to fall apart on Pompey's left, and continued falling apart in one long chain reaction all the way up to the river. It was a decisive victory. According to Caesar, and it's Caesar, so let's take these numbers with a grain of salt, he only suffered 200 casualties. He also says that 39,000 men from Pompey's army were either killed or captured, which is like the whole army. But whatever the numbers are, we know that Caesar's losses were superficial, and Pompey's were catastrophic. There was still some significant campaigning to do, and Caesar would stay busy for the next couple of years winning the Civil War, but after this battle, Caesar was no longer the underdog.
Great telling from a very young Historia Civilis there. And yeah, just great. I can't wait to watch him cover Cleopatra now. And the siege and just the insanity that plays there. So, yeah, another great video, guys. I will be seeing you all next Friday with the Siege of Alexandria. Bye, everyone.